Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
All right, we're back here on the Brown Sports Bag. It's James Brown and John Butler. This week we don't have any Diamond coaches with us. We've wrapped all that up, and their seasons are swinging into action today. I'm sure they're all excited to get out there and start playing. But here's what we're going to do with this show. We're going to wrap up the basketball season in terms of the high school season, what we saw. We're going to go over the girls' teams in the area, the regional tournament, talk to boys' teams. That'll be in segment 2. Talk a little NCAA tournament stuff because we really haven't had an opportunity to even really talk about the NCAA tournament, John.
Let's go.
So here we go. We're going to start out with the girls. The girls' 4th region tournament wrapped up on Sunday afternoon over at Diddle Arena. For the 3rd year in a row, it was Bowling Green and Barren County. And for the 2nd year in a row, Bowling Green pulled out the win. Dealing with their inside size is just it's not an insurmountable task for Barren County, but it has proven to be a task that is very difficult to overcome for them. Is that not the truth, John?
Yeah, it's the difference in the game. But let's give out shouts to both teams, Bowling Green and Barren County. They've been, I think, from the beginning, the best 2 teams in the region. Here or there, there's a slip up here or there where Greenwood, kind of moved up there, but I think all in all, those were the best 2 teams. You could see Bowling Green had no trouble getting to the finals, and to be honest with you, Barren County won their 2 games by double digits. Even the game against Greenwood, in which the game was close, but give Barren credit and give Katie Murphy credit. She was tremendous in the Greenwood game. Yeah, and to get to the finals, and it was It's a recurring theme. Not only the last couple of finals has been Barren County and Bowling Green. There's 3 straight. Yes. I can see 5 straight if they draw away from each other.
Well, that's what I told somebody, because basically you're talking about 2 young teams. I mean, Emma Hughes is the only senior for Barren, and she had a tremendous
year. That's correct.
And kudos to her. I mean, she played her heart out in that last game and every game. And I have a video online where I was talking to Piper Lindsay after the game, and I asked her, when did the switch over for Emma, where she became, I think, set the tone for the team. Yeah. And she said it was after Macy Lockhart went down, and somebody needed to kind of fill that role.
By the way, you had a great interview with Emma after the semifinal game as well.
Yeah, she's great to talk to. Yep. She's so unassuming about herself when it comes to what she does, but she has a huge impact on the game. But she is the only senior, to your point, and the young players, 8th graders, freshmen, got a lot of experience this year, especially in the postseason.
And Bowling Green returns just about everybody except for their point guard, Gray, who is an important player. Yes. But their best players are all back as well.
Yeah, because 2 of them are sophomores and one's a junior, and that's the Tanaya Bailey, who's probably will be the point guard, if not Husky next year, I would say. But inside, you still got James, and you still have Meadow Tisdale, who's got to be considered maybe the best player in the region. She's right up there.
Tisdale or James.
Yeah, either one. Mm-hmm. And so, we could see a 5-year run with these 2 playing each other.
No question about it. And it's a tall test because Bowling Green, the real difference between Bowling Green and anybody else in the region is their size. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing to be big. But you can be big and ineffective, but they're big and effective. Mm-hmm. And talking about the game from yesterday, I was very proud of Piper and Barren, to be honest with you. Just on paper, I knew it'd be a tough matchup, but the way we competed, and especially the contributions that we had in the first half, I looked up one time with about 4 minutes to go in the first half, and we had 2 8th graders and 2 freshmen on the floor. Yeah, with Emma Hughes. Mm-hmm. And not only were they competing, but they were holding their own. Mm-hmm. And Katie Geralds and Katie Elmore and Abby Varney. And Katie Murphy, who's an experienced freshman, but those kids you're talking about some great experience to have. Abby Varney was tremendous. I think she had 11 points in the first half.
Yeah, she had the first 7 points.
First 7, and Geralds and Elmore came in and contributed as well. And, it's 21-19 at halftime. Mm-hmm. Before eventually it just came down to really the offensive rebounds, and just the size of Bowling Green was probably ultimately the difference.
Yeah.
James is just, she is a difficult matchup for anybody in the state.
Yeah.
Because she's 6'4", but she's got a really good touch too.
That's what I was going to say. She shoots the ball well.
She shoots
not
the ball.
Just throwing the ball
No. And Bowling Green, they're well coached. I mean, Coach Head does a good job. I mean, they know where to throw it.
Yeah.
And then you throw in Meadow Tisdale, who's not 6'4", but she's 5'11", but she's also strong and athletic. And you throw in there, and those two kids had one. I think James had 15 and 14 for Tisdale, and it was the offensive rebounds, in particular the second half.
Yeah.
The rebounding disadvantage was not bad. 36-29 is not that bad, but it just seemed like they got some offensive rebounds. But the big thing is they got the ball in it was just very difficult for Barren to keep the ball out of the middle or out from inside. It was just hard, and we didn't quite score enough to get in our press. Our press bothered them.
Yeah.
But it was we didn't make enough shots to consistently put that pressure on, and ultimately that was probably that and the fact that Barren was 3 for 13 from three. Now, listen, Bowling Green was 1 for 14, so neither team shot it well.
Yeah.
But for Barren to pull the upset off,
yeah,
they were going to have to make more threes.
I think for Barren, critically speaking, hitting those outside shots means that whomever James is guarding, she has to actually pay attention to. And one of the things that I thought could be Barron's best opportunity to attack them was whomever she was guarding. She's a good athlete for her size,
right.
But whomever she would be guarding, maybe they could beat her off the dribble and maybe put her in a position where she'd have to foul when she went for the block or something of that nature. I thought they needed to figure out a way to maybe get her out of her comfort zone, but because they weren't hitting the outside shots, they really couldn't spread the floor out and maybe figure out some driving lanes. That didn't really pan out. The other thing was they got a little 7-0 run there, and I thought in the fourth quarter it was 33-32. And Bowling Green got a little 7-0 run. That proved to be decisive. And in that run, I think Barren had 2 or 3 opportunities. Either they had a steal or a rebound, and they weren't able to convert on the offensive end. And Bowling Green was able to get shots on the other end and basically put Barren in a position then where they were just in such a deficit that late in the game. It was going to be real hard for them to overcome that.
Yeah, and that's true. They had a little bit of a push at the start of the fourth quarter, and that was pretty much the difference of the game. That in the and James did not miss a shot. She was 6 out of 6 from the field and 7 out of 7 from. I mean, she had 14 rebounds. So,
yeah.
So you just add that up, and of course the first time that Barren and Bowling Green played early in the year, which Barren won, there's a lot of factors in that. Number one, Macy Lockhart played.
Yes.
And Macy had like 16 points, I believe.
Yep.
And number two, Gray did not play, their point guard.
Right.
And neither did Bailey.
Either of the Baileys.
Either of the Baileys. So,
Yeah.
You take those 3 out from
that's 3 of the top 6
from Bowling Green, and you take Macy out.
Yeah.
One of our best players. So, the complexion of the game changed and so forth. But to pull off these upsets, like I said, you need to shoot the ball better. In fairness to Bowling Green's going to say, well, we were 1 out of 14 and only 10 out of 20 from the line themselves.
Yeah.
So that they would counter with that. But I was really, really I was proud. I was worried going into the game that we could even get blown out.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be honest with you. But Piper had a really good game plan. Our kids were very poised, and you could tell early in the game when we got out to a 7-2 lead, and our freshman was making shots, and our 8th graders that came in were making shots. We were very, very poised, under control, composed. I thought Piper did a good job. She switched in the second half to this 3-2 zone. Played it a little bit differently, where the bottom players of the 3-2 basically stayed in, and she let her wings cover both the wings and corner. Mm-hmm. And I thought she did a good job with that. But it's eventually you got to score more than 38. It doesn't matter how well you defend people; you still have to score. Mm-hmm. And it just came down to we just could not make enough shots. But regardless, to be 20-8 with the youth of this team, and also with losing Macy Lockhart is really, really a nice accomplishment this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was an impressive run for them, and I hate that Emma Hughes didn't get the opportunity to go and play in the state tournament. I hate that for her, just personally, I guess. But I think, she looks back once she's out of high school and that kind of thing, and these players look back, and it's a heck of a year.
She had 6 points, 4 rebounds, made her last shot of the game. I think it was a 3.
Yes,
and was in the first half actually was trying her best to guard James at times.
Oh, yeah.
Emma's 5'6", and James is every bit 6'4".
Yeah.
And she, hung in there and did the best she could. And, I was proud of her. She had a fabulous senior year. Congratulations to Bowling Green. I think it's fair to say that they won it last year and did not actually get a chance to play.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was
they were, I think, about to play.
They were the next game. That's exactly right. So there's a couple of teams I've noticed in the boys that are back that did not get a chance. Off the top of my head, Ashland, I know, was undefeated last year.
Right.
And they won their region. And there's a couple more teams, and we'll see how many girls teams go back.
Right. Meanwhile, the Glasgow Lady Scotties, they had a new coach, and with Craig Pippin. Now he's an experienced coach. He's won a region at Russell County when he was over there. And they had a young team. Only one of their seniors, one of their experienced players came back. That was Ansley Adwell. Donnie C. Page didn't play. Nina McMurtry, who's a golfer, it would have been a junior, but she didn't play. So they were left with a bunch of really young players who had not a whole lot of experience outside of Ansley and Mia Cassidy, who did get to play.
Right.
And one of the things Pippin, I thought, pointed out, and when I talked to him after they lost that devastating loss to Franklin Simpson, frankly, was that, they didn't have a summer program. It was his first year. He's basically using the season to get the things in that he wants the players to learn. He had a couple of breaks where I think that's basically what they did, is they worked on things. And by the end of the season, I decided, you know what? I think they have a promising future in front of them. I know there wasn't a whole lot of hype around any of the other players on the team outside of Ansley, who's going to play at Bellarmine. But I really saw some things coming along for them. You mentioned earlier in the year just physical strength that they needed to get.
Yeah, I think that will be a big help for them.
Yeah,
because some of the games I saw them play, oftentimes they made the right play or the right pass, but they weren't physically strong enough to catch it, or they would get a slight bump, and instead of finishing a play, they would miss the shot or go out of bounds and things like that. That's exactly right. So, a conditioning and weight program, I think, will really, really help them because, they do have several players back. Now, listen, they will miss Adwell a whole lot. I thought she was really good in the district tournament.
Yeah.
But, with Hale back, and she's one that's kind of, she had several double-doubles as a freshman, but she's long and lanky, and she could, strength will really help her.
Yep.
And their point guard, you have Bites back, you had Bird back, who played well at the end of the year.
Yep.
And you had, obviously Cassidy, Mia. So, yeah, they have at least, I think Coach Cassidy has, not Coach Cassidy, Coach Pippin now knows it a little bit going into next year. Well, these players have proven to me they can play. So I don't think there's doubts, and at least he knows where to start.
Right.
We need to get stronger, and still think ball handling is an issue. They need to continue to get better, but at least he kind of knows where to start. Maybe last year wasn't really for sure.
Yeah.
And that will be an advantage.
Yeah, and I think he has 3 or 4 who we probably didn't get to see a whole lot of this year, who I think have potential. Mariona Bradley, Caroline Murphy. She's long and athletic. She's not big, but she's long and athletic.
Right.
They got a couple of more. Cynthia Austin probably off the bench. They have a big girl in the 8th grade who I think this was only her second year of really playing basketball. And so with that year, I think people might be a little bit surprised about how things go for them come next year, because as we mentioned, Pippin's an experienced coach. He knows what it takes to win, and he's just got to get them in the place where they need to be. And I think it'll be there. Now
it won't be a gimme to get out of the district next year, because Barren will be the easily, in my opinion, the second best team in the region.
Yeah,
it still will be Bowling Green. But
Yeah.
you never know down in Bowling Green. You don't know who's coming or who's leaving.
Right.
And just in boys or girls. But
Yeah.
just assume everybody comes back. Bowling Green will be a favorite.
Yeah.
The Barren be right there. And then, Glasgow and Monroe. Monroe has the capability of being much better.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, their talent level and the people that they have coming back, they could take a huge jump. So, so this district, I think Allen will they lost some of their better players, and they may take a step. Who knows? It's hard to say. But
they lost their point guard and their primary scorer.
That's right.
Meadow.
That's correct. So who knows?
They got some holes that really need to be filled there.
So, but the district, I think overall will be better next year.
Yeah, I do too. And here's the thing, and we can talk about this some more when we talk on the boys' side. This year, as we have talked about on this show, it's so hard to evaluate from week to week what's really going on because you don't know who's played, who's not played, the games that got canceled or switched, the gaps in playing time.
Practice time.
Yeah, absolutely disrupts whatever you were working toward.
Right.
So, I mean, this whole season, it seems like the bottom line is the teams that had some experience coming back and maybe some continuity really did better.
No question about it. Yeah, and I mean, Barren and girls was very fortunate that once they started, they didn't have any. The only interruptions that the Barren girls really had this year, for the most part, was the week of the snow and ice.
Yeah.
And they were very fortunate that they got to continue on with their schedule, and I think that helped them improve as the year went on.
Yeah.
Plus, they're well coached too.
Right.
And I think that's helped. And other schools may not have been as fortunate. You see giant gaps in schedules and practice times and things like that. So I think that did help Barren. You're right. It's difficult to evaluate college teams and high school teams this year. To be quite frankly.
Yeah, we'll talk about the difficulty in evaluating college teams in the third segment here. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we will talk about the boys' season.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, last week the boys' season wrapped up, basketball season wrapped up with the 4th region tournament. And in the end, it was Bowling Green and Greenwood in the final. So, congratulations to former Glasgow Scotty Will McCoy and former Barren County assistant Will McCoy, one and the same, for getting his team to the championship game. Competed well against Bowling Green in that game, but, man, Bowling Green's just got too many horses right now, especially this year with their 5 seniors.
Yeah, and, Bowling Green's been knocking on the door. They've been in the regional finals last 3 years and lost.
Yeah.
So, they were been the favorite all year. At one time, they were number 1 team in the state.
Yeah.
So, no surprise. Obviously, it had been a surprise for Bowling Green not to have won.
Right.
They've been the best team from day in, day out, and had the best player in the region.
Yeah.
And so congratulations to them. But Greenwood, in a 2-week period of time in which they got buried by Bowling Green in the district final by close to 35 points, they made a game of it in the final and gave Bowling Green a pretty good run. But Bowling Green was a deserving favorite this year.
Yeah, real quick, also, you mentioned the best player. I mean, I really like Isaiah Mason as a high school basketball player. I think he'll be a fine college player, too. What I really like about him as a high school player is he could, if he so desired, just decide he wants to dominate the game. And I mean that from an offensive sense. That may not help his team out. So he's a conscious enough high school player to pick his spots when he really needs to take over the game, and a lot of times it's in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, well, Bowling Green is not they are a defensive-minded team.
Yeah.
I mean, they do not score a ton of points. Mm-hmm. And that's probably, down the road, could be their weakness in the state tournament.
Yeah.
Though they've had some good fortune since they've won the region. A lot of the top teams in the state have been knocked out.
Yeah, there were some L's handed out.
That's exactly right. So Bowling Green will be formidable at the state tournament, but they're going to have to. I think they're going to score a little bit more, but they are a really good defensive team.
Yeah, their downside is if they get through the first round against Owen.
Second region. University Heights.
University Heights. That's what it was because everybody thought it was going to be Mattisville North Hopkins.
Right.
They get Ballard in that second round, and Ballard's a beast this year. Looks like. Anyway, let's get back to our teams. The Barren County Trojans, just like we were talking about with the Trojanettes, they lost a key player. With the Barren County Trojans, they lost the key player in Aiden Niken in that second week. and very, very much also got centered, found some ways to be a productive team. And one of the things they were best at was never being out of a game.
No, they were very, very, I don't know if this is the right word, connected.
Yeah.
And they played, I thought Warren got everything that you could possibly get out of the team this year.
Mm-hmm.
And Mason Griggs was just took on a different persona.
Yeah.
After Aiden went down and played himself into the third team all region.
Mm-hmm.
But him and Tay Pointer and Gavin Withrow, those three guards, really just played really well. And then you add Aiden Miller that came that kind of stood out a little bit, and Ryan Shirley did a lot of the dirty work. He was like the Emma Hughes or the boys team in a lot of ways. And they worked and they played so many close games and had so many incredible comebacks to get to the semifinals of the region and to win 20 games is really a feather in their cap. And I know they wish they could had competed better in the regional semifinals.
Yeah, Greenwood was just lighting it up.
And
Cade Stennett was really good.
He was tremendous, and Barren was really never into it. But I really think maybe by the end of the year, those last 2 weeks of the season, even though they had incredible memories and incredible games with the Glasgow comeback and the Franklin comeback, I'm not for sure that Barren played their best down the stretch. They played their best in segments, but not consistently. And I think part of it, looking back on it, they may have just kind of wore down a little bit. It takes an enormous amount of energy to keep coming back. These comebacks, and they had comebacks with their last game of the year against Southwestern. Pulaski was a comeback.
Yeah.
And that just takes a lot out of you. And I think maybe they just probably wore down a little bit at the end of the year. And did not have their best performance against Greenwood, but you're talking about some great memories. They'll have some great memories, and I think they not only the memories will be great, they'll never forget those, but I think this year will really set them up next year. Where I think when you add Aiden Nyken back, and the whole roster is back, the only senior is Gavin Withrow.
Corbin Murphy.
Corbin Murphy, I'm sorry. And Corbin's best game of the year was his last game.
He played real well.
That's right.
Greenwood.
I forgot. And Jones too off the bench. Those three seniors, but Barren will be quite formidable. They'll be top three easily next year in the region with Aiden Nyken coming back.
I mean, I think you could possibly circle, considering everything Bowling Green's losing, and they're always good, and Warren Central will always be around. But if you look at the Greenwood-Barren County game, I would not be shocked if people wrote that down starting next year as a potential regional final, because Cade Stennett's back. For Greenwood, most of their key players outside of Mark Grant would be back.
Well, all Warren Central's players are back.
They are all back.
And Bowling Green, the Warren County, they come in from everywhere. And until there's not a Warren County finals of the district, finals of the region, 20 straight years, I believe. Then whatever preseason poll that you make for the next year, you might as well put Bowling Green / Warren County, that district 1-2, and then you go from there.
Yeah, I would just say, like I said, you are correct in that what you've just painted there for us. But I would say this: if we were to just roll it forward and pretend like that's not the case.
Forget about facts.
Well, the facts are historic.
That's correct.
If we were to look at the facts of what talent is coming back to each team,
that's right.
I think you would say that the two most talented teams coming back could possibly be Greenwood and Barren.
Could be. That's right. Barren, I know that there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously Aiden's got to get healthy, and our point guard, losing Gavin is a big loss. So there's a lot of factors and so forth, and your team has to not be satisfied with just ending the year well. You got to stay hungry and get better, and all that. All the factors into you got to start over again. Basically, you don't start. The mistake that a lot of teams make is people like to start with where they ended. Mm-hmm. And that's always a mistake that teams make at every level in every sport. You don't start where you ended. You basically restart.
Yeah.
And you got to go through the entire process again, because you can't. It's kind of a coaching lingo. You can't skip steps.
Yeah.
And but it is something both the Barren boys and girls, and actually the Glasgow girls and boys. I think there's a lot to look forward to in this area.
Yeah, and meanwhile, mentioning the Glasgow Scotties, I mean, basically they were a bunch of juniors with a sophomore so thrown in. Ethan Harlow got to play at the end of the year, and we actually saw the impact he could have had on the season for them if he'd have been around the whole year, their only senior. But because he wasn't around, those young guys got to play a lot.
And Glasgow returns one of the best players in the region.
Yeah, and Sam Bowling.
And I would think they would have a tremendous hunger after how the season ended.
That's going to be a fascinating
That's got to be
question.
a motivating factor. It can either go one of two things. It can haunt you, or it can motivate you.
Yeah.
And if it's going to haunt you, then that's probably why you lost the 19-point lead.
Right.
But if it's going to motivate you to fix whatever you need to fix, or to get a little bit better, then it could be a great factor for Glasgow going into next year.
Yeah, because they certainly have the talent.
They do.
And I mean, look, Javon Clark coming off the bench, I mean, he showed he's got a lot of talent as well. He's just young, and those other guys have been playing together, And so you mix all that together, like you said, if they take that and get motivated by it, they would be a formidable team as well. I mean, you'd have to put them right up there at the top, especially within the 15th district, though, because Allen County's lost, 5 seniors? All of their offense, basically.
And the best, Mason Shirley is one of the best players that's played around here for a while.
Right. So, I mean, we expect them to drop back. Monroe's still in a rebuilding stage, more or less. And so you would say within the district, I mean, those games next year, if everybody's playing at peak, between Glasgow and Barren, should be just epic games. If we're just going off of what we know right now.
Right.
And I would say that both of them, based on the talent that they have coming back, and whatever motivations they get, I mean, they should be a threat within the 4th region. We always have to say with the caveat of let's see what happens at Bowling Green and Warren Central. But as I just said, we're just going off what we know right now. History probably will prove us wrong, but nonetheless. So, I mean, there's lots of good things to look forward to for Glasgow and Barren County fans.
Yes, and I mean, basketball. I mean, we got through this year, and it was a tough year for everybody, but we got through. And I think we probably owe. There's a lot of people that I think we ought to thank and be thank. I mean, you got to thank the players.
Yeah,
they started on October 26th.
Right.
And it went for a while, then took a little break, and they played through April basically. Mm-hmm. That's a long time. That's 5 months.
Yeah,
really 5 months, 6 months of playing. That's a long time. But you got to thank the players, the coaches, a lot of work on the administrative side, you know, in terms of facilities and schedules and things like that. Referees, there's a lot of people that did a lot of things to get this sport back and give these kids an opportunity to play.
Yeah, I will tell you this, though. One thing that did disappoint me during the course of the season, and it just stood out because the gyms were so empty, was just what people say to the referees during the course of the game.
Yeah, it's bad.
I mean, it's no one is perfect, and I am sure there are plenty of mistakes. And I've even had moments, I think I've discussed this with you, not on the air, but where I've wondered about the officiating, not necessarily whether or not it was good or bad, but exactly what the emphasis were. Whether they did that this year, whether they did the emphasis thing, which they usually do coming into a season. And so there were games where the officiating from game to game was not as consistent, but I don't think that had anything to do with good or bad officiating. I think that was a product of the season itself, that maybe not having those emphases and that kind of thing. And so, but no one's perfect, and these people aren't getting paid big bucks to come out there and officiate.
No.
I actually thought the coaches were a lot better this year toward the officials than they have been historically speaking.
For the most part.
I thought the officials were real good toward the coaches a lot more this year. I thought there was a lot more respect and empathy toward each other.
Yep.
But not from the stands. I mean, I hate that.
That didn't change.
No.
It makes me, two things about officiating again after being out of it and watching. I appreciate the job they do more and more, and I also wonder why they do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's both. I appreciate it because they for the most part they get a lot of this stuff right, but I wonder why you would. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I wonder why coaches do what they do sometimes, because it can get vicious in a lot of ways. It's things that people say and things like that. It can get disappointing, and not everybody's that way. But boy, but when you hear things, you just kind of like shake your head. This is. There's more to life than a basketball game, and it's more to life than yelling at a coach or yelling at an official, and it does make you kind of shake your head, like
Why did you come to the game? If it makes you that angry, why didn't you stay home? That's my thought sometimes. It's like, why are you here?
People are emotionally attached oftentimes to these games through their children or grandchildren or whatever, but that does not necessarily give you a license to. I know you pay your money, but it doesn't really give you a license to abuse people.
Yeah. And look, I get the emotional attachment. I mean, both my children played high school sports,
right.
And there were moments as a parent where I thought things weren't exactly right.
Well, I've yelled at officials myself as a coach, and I've been teed up. And as soon as I did, it didn't take me long after the fact, no matter how mad I got, to feel bad about what I did. And I can't tell you how many times that I have apologized to officials after the game, even for just acting like a fool, because sometimes I felt like I caused some of our crowd to get a little bit more incensed.
Set off of you, huh?
Yeah, I know. So it's an emotional deal, but it's thank goodness we got them.
Yeah,
I'm glad we got crowds, and I'm glad we have officials. It's in a perfect world, I wish and I go to Lexington and watch games too. I wish the decorum would be a little bit better at times.
Yeah, it's not geographic specific.
No,
you can go anywhere in this country, and it's the same.
Yes.
It's the same deal, and
same dynamics.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I do have moments where I think to myself, I'm not sure why the coaches and/or officials or anybody here puts up with this.
Right.
The atmosphere that's going on, and I guess that's the thing. I would hope over the last year, if there's nothing else that's come out of the last year, we all can maybe take a step back and ask ourselves, how much am I allowing my emotions to dictate my personality when that's not really who I am?
Or maybe that is who you are.
Well, if that is who you are, I'm very sorry. I'm sorry.
It's maybe a little bit of both.
I think you might want to go talk to somebody about that. All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, this is the first time we're really going to get to talk about the men's NCAA tournament. And first of all, the schedule is a little odd because they had to wait to see if anybody's going to drop out. So we didn't get those play-in games on the Tuesday night. Tournament didn't get started till the Friday instead of the Thursday. And that pushed everything back. And I felt like that just got everything off schedule in terms, like for me, paying attention to the tournament, it got things off schedule. Plus, we had regional tournaments, district tournaments, all this other stuff going on alongside it, which we usually don't have. And so, I mean, to me, I looked up and there were teams like in the next round or who'd won the first round game, and teams that had lost. And I was like, I'm not sure if I would have known coming into this tournament. I saw the seeding, but I'm not sure outside of 4 or 5 teams if I'd have known who was actually good this year. And I think that's kind of borne out in the tournament as it's gone along.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, I love the tournament, but it's not as easy. It has not been as easy to follow this year, mainly because what you said. It was hard to get a handle on who was top notch and who wasn't, and because of the COVID and the lapses, and the other thing is the conference has pretty much stayed within their conference, so it's hard to get a read on.
It was kind of like the football.
It was.
You didn't really know how good really anybody was outside of their conference,
and everybody thought the Big Ten was the best, and they may not be the best.
They weren't. By the numbers.
Well, Michigan is really the only team that's around.
Yeah.
All the other ones, they had a group of 9, and they all kind of went to the wayside. Now Michigan is still around, but the rest of them, Illinois, Ohio State, the big guns, they're gone. Iowa, 2 seed, they are all went by the wayside. So and the Pac-10, who very few people watch and who've taken a lot of hits last year, they've been outstanding. UCLA and Oregon State and Oregon. I mean, they have
USC. I mean, they were good too.
USC. I mean, those teams have been, and I think it's a combination of not knowing a lot about them and me personally listening to Bill Walton call their games. that sometimes I kind of disregard them, but they have played. The only thing that has kind of played out the way I thought is Gonzaga's really good, and they are in a real favorable bracket too, and they're good, and Baylor's good. And I said that earlier in the year. I thought those two teams were really, really good, but I also thought the Big Ten was, and the Big Ten has proven not to be that good, and or have been slightly overrated.
Yeah,
one of the two. So and even the Big 12 outside of Baylor has kind of fallen to the wayside as well.
Yeah, I think the thing about the Big Ten was we did not get some of those Big Ten, SEC, Big Ten, ACC
not many
games this year. Not enough of them to know anything.
Right.
And also because we didn't get those, that means we also didn't get the other kind of cross-bracketing that you would see, SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, that kind of thing. So we were just going on what was available information-wise. And sometimes it's kind of like if you think back to the Big 12 a number of years ago in football, where every team looked like they had a great offense. But you got to the bowl games or you got to the Final Four in football, and it turned out, no, they just all had bad defenses.
Right.
And maybe that's the case with the Big Ten. You just can't really tell, I think, the minutia of the game when it's just interconference so much, and you don't really get to see what other conferences do. It's
like playing in your own. It's like playing in your own region in high school.
Yeah.
I mean, to know how strong your region is how are they competing with other regions? Your top teams versus the top teams of other regions. What's the same thing right here? And it was just hard to figure out. Other than I know Gonzaga can flat out score.
Yeah.
And if you can't put up 80 with them, you can't beat them.
Well, and also they were one of the teams that ended up playing a pre-conference schedule that they played a number of teams from other.
My doubts with Gonzaga was not that they were good, is they hadn't played anybody in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been a while, and they just ran through their conference so easily.
And
but apparently,
they have run through the NCAA tournament so far as well.
I mean, and you mentioned Michigan. I mean, that's Michigan's next task is to see if they can be the team to take down Gonzaga.
Right. And Baylor's playing well.
Yeah.
They've had a key COVID loss, but they've come back. And but the Michigan destroyed a pretty good Florida State team yesterday, and that was really impressive.
Yeah, Florida State was one of the teams that I thought might get to the Final Four. I mean, I know you weren't high on them necessarily.
My philosophy, they play too many people.
Well, they do, but I just thought maybe they, last year I thought they were a team that could win the national title, and we never got the chance to see it because I thought they just had the talent, and I still thought they had the talent, but Michigan just took them apart.
They did.
Meanwhile, one of the teams that I really thought was going to be a one and done in the tournament, Houston, they're proving that they are
in
a
the Final
team that
Eight
you
right
can't
now.
stop. They really can score.
Final Eight. Well, they defend.
True. Yes.
Their calling card is defense, and I had Syracuse as one of my few good picks going to the Final Eight.
Yeah.
So I had them winning 3 games. They won 2, but they got taken down on Saturday by Houston. So Houston is still around, and in fact, Houston, Oregon State, I think is the winner goes to the
the Final Four there.
Final Four there.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. And then we had Arkansas. They escaped
against
Oral
Oral Roberts. Yes, I mean Oral Roberts was trying to become the first 15 seed to make it to the Final 8.
Yeah,
and led most of that game.
Yeah, and had a shot to win it. Really.
Had a good shot.
Yes,
had a really good shot. It was a well drawn up play, and so you got Baylor and Arkansas. I like Baylor.
Yeah,
to handle Arkansas.
I'm with you. It looks like we have a good opportunity to see maybe UCLA as an 11 seed there in the Final Four. Now, we're typing this a little ahead of time because of some restrictions we had coming up on Monday.
They're playing Alabama as we're talking right now.
And beating Alabama as we're talking right now. And which is kind of amazing because, they were down in their play-in game and had to rally to win that, and here they are.
And they're playing one of their leading scorers is somebody who could not get into the game at UK. Johnny Zuzang, what's his name? Johnny Zuzang, or whatever, averaged like 2 points a game because he was another shooter who just didn't defend good enough.
Oh my God!
So he went home to California, where he's from, and he's, there. If he's not their best player, second best player, but he just couldn't defend.
Yeah, well, defense is key. You can't win championships without defense unless, of course, you score more points than your opponent.
I know. Yeah,
it's funny how that works.
It's funny how that works. That's right.
Well, I mean, it's. I think it's been a fascinating tournament. If it had been on its usual schedule,
and I don't like it all in one spot. I do miss that.
Yeah,
I like it all across the country, and I'm a little disappointed. I've taken this COVID really seriously, you know that, and all that stuff. But I do think that there should be perhaps some more people allowed to come to the games. I have no idea why they wouldn't let all the nurses and doctors and first responders just fill up that place. They don't have masks. They've all had their shots. Let them come. Just give some atmosphere.
See, that's my thing. This goes back to they attempted this at the Super Bowl, and I think it worked pretty well. It did work.
That's correct.
But now, as you just pointed out, most of your medical professionals are going to have been vaccinated by now. It is an excellent opportunity for the NCAA to do something that is positive PR.
Right.
But as the NCAA seems to always do, they just trip over themselves in every opportunity.
I know. It's just still weird to say, and they have a dome too.
Yeah.
Hey, they could
put seats like 50,000 people. They could put them all over the place.
That's exactly right. Just stuff like that. I think would probably be a nice thing to do.
Okay, so
and a safe thing. I think you can do it safely.
Yeah. So here's the thing: if you are listening, NCAA, which you're not,
no.
The Final Four is coming up. Here's your opportunity to get some good PR.
That's right.
Instead of constantly being reminded that the FBI is doing your job for you and you're doing nothing about this college basketball scandal. All right? So why don't you get out ahead of something for once and do something proper and do something positive and sell that instead of, being constantly berated by the shortcomings that you have, which are many. But, hey, you know what? I may be in the wrong line of work, John.
Maybe you need to be a PR guy for the NCAA.
The problem with that kind of thing is sometimes I'm a little too honest with the people who pay me.
That's
they don't always like that.
Honesty can be a bad policy in certain spots.
Yes, it can be. But as this tournament's going forward, I mean, what are some things that are there some things that you have enjoyed about it?
I like the games.
Yeah,
absolutely. I like the games. I like watching them. I like their own, all day long. I miss the Thursday night, Friday night games. I do. I mean, Saturday and Sunday and Monday, Tuesday, or whatever. I still like the games. There's no question about it. But I miss the atmosphere. It's still basketball is played best when you have an atmosphere.
Yeah,
that's why I don't like AAU games. That's why I don't like summer games.
Mm-hmm.
I like people with crowds and things like that. I do miss that.
I will say also we've gotten some opportunities to meet some players around the country we wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet, and that is the special thing about the NCAA tournament to me.
And there's too many charges taken. Let me just say it.
Hey, look, I don't know about the block charge call.
Too many.
I mean, it's. I will say that I appreciate the players who are willing to give up their bodies to try to draw a charge. The problem is the way the charge is called sometimes, in my opinion, actually disincentivizes athletic play.
Right.
And I don't think that's a positive thing.
I would
for
never
basketball.
call a charge if the defender's hands are not up.
Yes.
Just running in front of somebody and just standing and getting knocked down. I'm kind of tired of watching that.
So that's not defense?
No.
That's just like being a speed bump or something?
Yeah, at least have your hands up in like a guarding position. But just running and getting in front of somebody and just to get knocked down, I'm not a big fan of anymore.
Yeah, I don't.
You have the circle in college. You had to be outside the circle. I would also add an additional rule: your hands had to be up.
Outside the circle with your hands up.
Up. That's correct.
That's a good point because you really aren't really playing defense.
No, you're not.
Otherwise,
just running in front of somebody. Now, who does that? You don't do that anywhere else on the court. I'm just going to run and get in front of. Just run and just stand in this spot with my hands down.
One of the things though that I think. I have to wonder about being coached to draw a charge, whether they coach them to put their hands down because of being concerned about the official calling you because you reached your hand over or whatever, even though you had position. It goes back to, it's the most difficult and / ridiculous call in basketball at all levels, really, the charge block call. There's no winning with it. Again, let's put it this way. That means technically when Vince Carter jumped over Frederick Weiss and dunked on him, that was a charge.
That's right.
No,
it was not. I know. I agree.
We would not erase that highlight for anything.
Now, was his hands up? I don't remember. But anyway.
He was busy trying to get out of the way, I think.
That's right.
Anyway. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, the women's NCAA tournament has not been nearly as fascinating, I guess, if you're rooting for underdogs, that kind of thing. It's been the power teams have done pretty well in the NCAA.
That's normal in the women's game.
It is.
That's still the women's game is still more chalk than chalk, meaning favorites tend to win more. But it's more. There's not a dominant team like the past. I think talent is starting to spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's probably still going to come down to the winner of UConn Baylor. That's a game that will be played. I think it's Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
A winner goes to the Final Four. South Carolina is right there again.
Yep.
As usual. Stanford's really good. It's going to probably come down. Louisville's still around as of right now. Taping this show, they're ahead of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff Walls is one of the top coaches in the country, and they're still around. I don't think they quite have the horses of the teams I just mentioned, but I like watching the women's game. I wish the women's tournament was played at a different time. I don't know why they go head-to-head with the men. I think their game would be so much better off if either they had their tournament before or after.
Mm-hmm.
Either push their season back or start it later, where they don't have to go head-to-head. I know ABC has picked up, ESPN and ABC are televising a lot of the women's games, and I just think it would get a bigger audience because a lot of the quality of play, there's a freshman kid out of Iowa that's just tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
Her and the girl for UConn, both freshmen, are incredible players. They can flat out score, and they are fun to watch. They played each other on Saturday where UConn defeated Iowa, but man, they're good. So the women's game is in a pretty good spot, to be honest with you, at the national level. But they kind of get lost in the men's tournament, and I think they could do themselves a favor by getting away from that a little bit.
I think the other day I was listening to this interview with Jackie McMullen, and she was talking about with the women's tournament a couple of things that I guess she was theorizing, but they sounded correct to me. One thing about the women's tournament and the fact that it stays so close to the power teams being successful in it is that you do have players who are around for 4 years. And so the system comes in, it's in place, the players are in it. But I also think that her other point was that's why just the general quality of the game in terms of just basketball play is superior to the men's game that you see in the tournament a lot of times, is because you got players who are there. They're in the system. They can run the defense. They can run the offense. And then when you get in special
you don't have the one and dones.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you get into special talent, like you were talking about with the two freshmen at Iowa and UConn, they can plug them in there and they can shine with their talent because they're not having to carry an undue burden in terms of like building from scratch every year. And also, you look at the women's game. I mean, I'm not a specific fan of any particular team, but I can probably name more of the UConn women over the last 5 years than I can the UK men.
Right.
Just because they've had an opportunity to shine on the biggest stage. And a lot of them are just fantastic basketball players.
No question.
And so I think maybe it makes the tournament a little more boring because it's, you're not going to get the upsets, and the casual fan doesn't get the juice from watching the upsets and the big plays. But in terms of like just quality of play,
it's great.
Just
it really is.
It's
good. It really is good.
Who do you think is really going to win it though? Who you pegging to win the women's tournament?
Boy, it's tough. If UConn beats Baylor, I think UConn will win it.
Yeah.
But that's no guarantee they can beat Baylor. It's not a really good matchup. Baylor is big.
Mm-hmm.
They're Bowling Green big.
Right.
South Carolina is always tough, but Stanford this year is kind of sneakily good.
Yeah.
I always like UConn. I'm for Louisville, but I'd always appreciate the style of play that UConn plays. They can flat score, and they are so disciplined. I mean, I'm just a huge fan of Gino and his style of play.
Yeah, they are kind of proved that
they are the UCLA of the men's UCLA when they dominated. That's what they've turned to.
Yeah, I mean, because they have the talent and they have the coaching that.
And he only plays about 6 or 7. I mean, they're not overly deep.
Right.
They're not deep, but man, they are offensively
Those
just
6
tremendous.
or 7 are some of the best 6 or 7 you're going to see.
Right, and this is not his best team.
Yeah.
It's not his best, but they're really good.
Yeah. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.